Do you remember Alexander and that one time he had a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day? Well, in the Spanish sci fi horror Timecrimes, Hector quadruples down on the bad day idea and unintentionally causes ripple effects that will have tremendous side effects. If you like Primer, you might enjoy this time travel mindbender. A man accidentally gets into a time machine and travels back in time nearly an hour. Finding himself will only be the first of a series of disasters with unforeseeable consequences. So, Timecrimes is a mind-bending sci-fi thriller from 2007 that follows a man named Hector who, one day while creeping on a young woman, stumbles upon a masked attacker stalking and chasing him. Now, while attempting escape, Hector finds a mysterious ally who helps him hide from the pursuer, only to come out of hiding about an hour in the past. This then starts a circular chain of events that gets more precarious as each hour passes. Now, like a lot of the time travel stories, this one also features the idea that events are not only looped, but have ramifications when things are augmented. Now, the storytelling, it's clever, especially as this utilizes an isolated and self-contained setting. While we don't know much about how or why the time travel machine exists, the concept it's presented as being grounded in reality and plausible. Hector is convincingly confused at what is happening, but because this contraption just exists in the world, it's not too hard to accept it as the MacGuffin that allows all of the impending chaos to transpire. Now, the storytelling is tight and filled with suspense. The situations that Hector encounters, or rather creates, they become increasingly complex and dire. I appreciate how I was trying to work out what catastrophe will be created by Hector's latest changes, while also attempting to figure out where all this was headed. Now, the mystery, it's engaging, and because the stakes keep rising, there's a great deal of anxiety and suspense that builds. I like that this contains a pretty good examination of the consequences that come about because of one's actions. Hector gets to struggle with identity and choice, and despite being given specific instructions and warnings, he still wrestles with thinking that he knows the best course of action, which we then watch take on some unexpected calamities. Now, it's also captivating to watch how the time travel and following decisions impact Hector's own life, creating a puzzle for him to solve with the hopes of escaping that loop with his life still intact. Now, I like the conflict that arises through Hector's character development. He's kind of a mild guy, but he's not wholly likable. And then, when he spies an attractive young woman, he voyeuristically stalks her in a very creepy manner. Later, we get to see better and more redeeming behaviors. Initially, though, I didn't view him as a positive character worthy of rooting for. There are moments later on when he does gain sympathy, but that's only through the growth that comes about because of the situations that he creates through the time travel. Now, there are a couple of other characters within this story, but outside of Hector, these are all strangers without any meaningful development. Now, we don't need to know about them for this story, just seeing how they are connected to Hector is sufficient enough to understand their place within the narrative. I do think this can mildly hamper some of the emotional connection that Hector shares with each character, but these relationships are secondary in importance to our understanding and then connection with Hector. The pacing of the story is slowly deliberate at the start, and then gains a bunch of momentum and continues with an anxiety-filled, speedy pace, matching the energy of the pursuit and the danger. Now, it's a quick watch, just 92 minutes, and the story, it doesn't drag at all, making good use of each moment to build on the intrigue and deliver additional compounding complications. This is edited also in a way that makes the progression easy to grasp, despite the additive character movements that come about as a result of that time travel. Now, the editing, it also helps to maintain some obscurity within the plot, creating mostly concealed twists that can add both excitement as well as surprise. Now, somewhat surprisingly for a sci-fi time travel movie, this doesn't utilize special effects outside of some practical ones, which mainly consist of makeup. This doesn't hurt the storytelling or impact of the plot in any way. In fact, it's one of the elements that really helps to make this feel more grounded and plausible. I mean, it's similar to Primer, where we don't really see much in terms of time travel actions, but get to watch the events before and after they play out. The same is true with Timecrimes. Hector gets into this tub-like container and then the lid closes. When it opens, he's traveled back in time. And because there's no massive focus on how the technology works, the story doesn't get bogged down with exposition that ultimately wouldn't add any meaning to this particular story. Now, for some, I know that getting more of that background info, how and why the contraption works, is important. But by just going with the idea that it exists, it creates a more streamlined and efficiently told story. The ending does feel a little ambiguous and not fully concrete. In a way, though, it's also satisfying because we do get a resolution. Now, I don't think it wraps up the story in just a seamless manner so that there aren't any loose ends dangling. And I think these can be, sticking points for a lot of people. Now, for me, I had already resigned myself to certain concessions that I was able to just accept the ending at face value and then not dwell on the additional possibilities. Overall, Time Crimes uses the isolated location and minimal cast to create a setting ripe for mystery. The sparse technology and simplicity of the time travel allow the narrative to progress efficiently while also building a story that raises some deep philosophical questions. The character development can be thin in places, and there are elements in the finale that feel undone, but because of the tight pacing and linear storytelling, this succeeds in providing a unique and thrilling time travel film with nail biting anxiety and terrific circularity. There's no sex, some nudity, a lot of profanity, and some brutal violence. I give Time Crimes 3.5 out of 5 couches. So, are you a fan of time travel stories? Do you have one that stands out to you as just stellar? Now, for me, one of the best is Primer, but I would love to hear yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.